right? So today we're going to learn about Michigan and the things we grow in Michigan.
So we were teaching a lesson on Michigan agriculture and having the kids learn about how diverse Michigan is. Last time they learned about that Michigan is the second most agriculturally diverse state in the country, second only to California, and we have snow a significant portion out of the year.
Anybody have a guess what you're going to do with that plate? You have a plate in front of you. Has anybody seen that plate before? Where have you seen that plate before? Raise your hand. Arby?
2 weeks ago.
Last time I was here, well, 2 weeks ago was Halloween, right? And we did those fun smoothies and vampire bites. But you're right, that another time I was here, we talked about it because it was on those maps of the whole country, right? It showed us the different food groups. So we're going to go through, because we're going to make our Michigan plates, we're going to try and look at our map and figure out all of the different food groups and what products we have. And then you're going to get to pick what goes on your plate and where it comes from.
Where I've kind of decided to put food core was kind of social studies. Third grade studies and fourth grade now. It seems to be the easiest place. For instance, today's lesson, you could kind of make it about the economy as well as, you know, the regions and just the kind of show the diversity of Michigan, I guess. It plays right into social studies.
Third graders focus more on the history of Michigan, and then the other grades are focusing on how we relate to other places. So they're learning about places all across the globe and what makes Michigan special. So we focus a lot about the agricultural diversity, and so it actually speaks to more than just the geography, but the local economy. They can learn about something that has to do with climate. So last time we looked at coastal areas and fruit production, and we talked about the lake effect.
The water holds the energy longer, right? We talked about the lake effect, the effect that the wind has when it goes across the water.
And so the older kids were learning a lot about what that is, how temperature is affected, what a microclimate is. So there's a lot of different things weaving together to kind of create the whole lesson.
So let's look at our legend. This tells us, what does the legend tell us about our map? Kelsey.
It tells, like, what the stuff is, like the symbol of wheat. Pumpkins looks like a pumpkin, and like it shows the stuff on the county that's sold and stuff.
We first had the kids look at a map of county by county what the top 3 agricultural products are throughout Michigan, and some of those are non-food items. So the first thing we did to identify what we were going to have on our Michigan plate in the end was eliminate those things that the kids were not going to eat.
All right, so we're going to go through, and first we're just going to cross off some things that we don't eat. Who can raise their hand and give me something they see in their legend that we don't eat? Phoenix.
Hay.
Hay. We do not eat hay. So we can cross that one out.
Trees.
Christmas trees. We don't eat Christmas trees.
Or
Peyton? Horses. Yeah, we don't really eat horses in this country, at least when they're grown in Michigan, right?
So we eliminated things like Christmas trees or logging, different industries that are tied to agriculture in Michigan but aren't going to end up on your plate.
We did not eat soybeans.
Soybeans. And you would think that we could, right? Sometimes we do. We eat them, like if you've gone to a Japanese restaurant or if you've cooked at home, sometimes you eat those little green pods. Sometimes they're called edamame. Has anybody had those? Some of us? All right. So those are soybeans too, but the soybeans we grow in Michigan, those ones, if they're not going to humans, where do you think they're going? Yes.
Animals.
Yes, exactly. Soybeans go to the animals a lot of the time.
When we're going through the legend, a lot of the times kids will say, well, soybeans, I know that we eat those. And we get to have this conversation in a very casual atmosphere of we're just decoding this legend. It's actually talking about really high-level concepts like industrial agriculture and uses of different forms of agriculture and what that looks like. So whether someone growing flowers for yield and for production value is very different than someone growing a cucumber patch in the garden. And they get that very concrete understanding of place through food. And so they can see that and get this higher level piece to it of not just every farm is producing food for people. I can't just automatically go to a farm and get food, which is something that's only happened in the past 50 years. I mean, that's not how agriculture always was. So it's very interesting to see 3rd, 4th, 5th graders start to understand that concept with something as simple as you're decoding a legend.
The food core learning helps me in all areas of our curriculum. We work on just vocabulary building that ties into our language arts. When we talk about a story, we can a lot of times connect it to something that we've done in food core.
We'll focus on vocabulary in different grades. So one of the things that happens between the grades, I mean, I'll teach the same lesson. Sometimes if grades are close, like 4th and 5th, we'll have a similar lesson. In this case today, it was a 3rd and 4th split and a 4th, 5th split. So some of the vocab was just a little bit different, what we focus on. So things like aquaculture. A lot of times you'll see a kid will come up and say, well, aquaculture isn't something we eat because it's not something they recognize as something that would be on their plate.
Sydney?
Aquaculture.
Aquaculture, interesting. And we talked about this last time. Does anybody remember what aquaculture is? Remember we have this word agriculture. It has the same ending, and it's about growing things on farms, right? So aquaculture, you also have a symbol there that might give you a hint. Yep. Fish, growing fish.
But then we talk about, well, what does that mean and what is the symbol? And so you'll see a fish on the plate and they'll go, oh, aqua, that reminds me of water. And culture, we talked about agriculture and diversity. And so it has that root ending and it has something that reminds you of another word. So looking at the context and the picture, and that ties in the language arts piece of it.
Aqua had a fish and it reminded us of water, so that was a hint. And flora reminded us of something like floral and had a picture of a flower. Exactly, so that gives us some clues.
Then as a class, we go through and identify what does fall into those 5 main food groups. So we'll have kids talk about what is a protein, what is dairy, what's a fruit and what's a vegetable. And so they'll go through and actually categorize each of those items and go through the legend to make it easier to connect the legend with the actual plate.
All right, I think we're ready to move on to categories. I think we've eliminated all the things we don't eat. All right, so now you should all have colors in front of you. All right, and I love that Tristan matched them up to his spots on his plate, so he knows. Awesome, and Joe. So you're going to use that to coordinate what groups go on your plate. Now, who can pick the first category, so one of the categories from your plate, and give me one example of something. And this is where you can use your colors. So now we're going to go through and create a code for our legend that matches. What do you think we're going to try to match? You've got your colors in front of you, you have a plate, and you have a legend. What do you think we're going to do?
We are going to look on the list that we have, that were the things we just crossed out, and we're going to look to see what's not crossed out, and we're going to put them in either the fruits, the vegetables, the proteins, the grains, or the dairy.
Yes, you can give me a category and one example from your legend to start us off. Here.
Deer goes to protein.
Deer goes to protein. Excellent. Who can keep the protein category going? Give me another example of a protein. Andrew.
Hogs.
Hogs. All right, so who can start off our next category? Keegan.
Cherries.
Cherries. And what category do they belong to? Fruits. Yep. So we can circle fruits. All right, so now we're in the category of fruits.
Tomato.
Tomato. It's so tricky. Hold on, before you circle it. Tomatoes are tricky because when you talk about the study of plants, which is called botany, tomatoes are a fruit because anything that has seeds inside of it is a fruit. So even things like cucumbers, squash, all these things that we think of as vegetables, technically, they're fruits, which is funny, right? But there's a department in the United States called the United States Department of Agriculture. And they get to tell us what we want on our plate, what our plate's supposed to look like. They set nutritional guidelines for us, and they get to tell us what they classify as a fruit versus a vegetable. And even though the study of plants says that tomatoes are a fruit because they have seeds, the USDA says that they're a vegetable because they're not really sweet. Right? They're something that we eat on a salad or something that we eat in a sauce. Usually, fruits are going to be sweet when they talk about it. It's different than plant science. So there's a couple of those that are very confusing on here. So now that we have our code that matches our plate, Let's look at our Michigan plate.
The My Plate is based on the USDA My Plate, and we've took a little spin on it and called it My Michigan Plate, so that the kids know that Michigan is the second most agriculturally diverse state in the country. And we ask the kids to make a guess at the beginning of the lesson if we can fill our plate with Michigan products.
Do you think, based on what we know about diversity and agriculture in Michigan, do you think we can make a plate that is all Michigan products?
Yeah.
All right, so we're going to talk about food groups, and we're going to see how we can make our Michigan plate. All right, so you are going to create your very own Michigan plate. So you are going to pick something from the legend that goes in each category, and then you are going to write, what's that word that's under the line that you all have on your sheets? Who can read that for me? Kelsey. County. So what do you think you're going to do when you find something that you want to put here? What do you think you have to do with your map? Nathan.
You have to put
You have to find it on the map, right? So if you chose cherries for your fruit, what could you write over here? Who can find a county that has cherries in it? Keegan. Grand Traverse, cherry capital of the world, right? Produce more tart cherries than anywhere else in the whole world.
So we not only cover what those 5 food groups are and what goes within them, we're covering what's in Michigan. And so they look at each category and they're going to add an element of something that they've seen on the map of what's grown in Michigan, and they're going to put it on their plate to really recognize both the food groups, what makes a balanced meal, and what's available locally. So they're learning both the capability of identifying the food groups, so they're learning what an ideal plate should look like if they're trying to eat a balanced meal, and they're also learning where things come from within their state. So they're learning both agricultural commodities and what those are and what can be grown in Michigan, as well as what helps make a balanced meal.
As far as the activity itself, I mean, hands-on, coloring crayons, I mean, they love it. And you saw them, they stayed mostly on task for an hour, which generally you don't do. Usually every half hour you're switching.